Welcome back, everyone. It's me again. It's Conrad Rogas, and this episode is video. It's not an episode. It's a part two of episode 115 of This Week in Tyranny. This show is the epitome of they had us in the first half, not gonna lie. So I got to do a part two. It's Monday, February 17th. I did the show yesterday on Sunday, and I had to cut it short because I got audio interference like the last 20, 25 minutes of the show, which I did not even notice until I was in the last stage of editing it. I used to have audio issues all the time because obviously, you start out doing this, making videos and stuff, you're going to run into there's a big technical learning curve, right? So I didn't know anything. I had crappy equipment, I couldn't even record with this microphone because then I figured I had to get an audio interface and then I had to find a way to plug that in, record it through that. Then so I was synchronizing audio and recording it through Pro Tools and all this kind of stuff. I stopped having issues with my equipment. I kind of had like a flow. I mean, it's 115 episodes. You might as well be good or at least somewhat decent around that time. Otherwise, you got a problem. But, that's not recently. Recently, it's been seamless. So, I played it up a little bit, right? Put some spooky white text over a black background. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But, I always like simple explanations for why things go wrong. The only plausible, normal explanation for why I all of a sudden had issues is, in my view, it's like this cable wearing out. We'll see, right? We're going to see if it works. This cable wearing out or my audio interface wearing out, breaking down, because I put all the other electronics in airplane mode. I don't get other interference, so other than it being like a CPU issue, but it doesn't seem like it. It really seems like it would be a cable thing. But whatever it was, the timing grabbed my attention. So there seems to be a definite link, and I'm going to make the definite link and incorporate it into this part two. So I'm going to finish the episode so you actually have a full story with a conclusion. And also I'm making this part two to talk about these connections, right? In the video that I just did, I talked about electronic harassment. I don't talk about electronic harassment every episode, right? A couple times I've talked about it. Targeted individuals, not so much. And I talked about Zersetzung, which is decomposition, which is a way to target political dissidents, political opponents, and basically make their life really difficult, right? That's a very mainstream, historical, non-controversial example of something that people think is pretty spooky and conspiratorial, but it's real. I also talked about the way that whistleblowers and people who speak out are targeted and they have things happen to them, and it happens in plain sight, so it doesn't look like they're being targeted and no one can connect A to B. People who get close to putting the pieces of a puzzle together or expose a specific area of the control structure, I mentioned some of those people by name. And that's Bill Cooper, that's Rosa Koire, that's Lloyd Pye, that are especially close to me, that I've learned a lot from. So that caught my attention, and then it caught my attention that the moment when I saw it later, I was about to upload. I was about to upload my thing, and I realized, well, what's this weird audio thing? Usually I don't even have to listen to it before I upload it because it just goes through seamless. So right when that interference started, I said, they create a storm for anyone who does not let them have their way. And it was right at that time that it happened. And right at that time, I went into talking about the nuance within the control structure. So we all know option one, the rich and corrupt run everything. And I just got to talking about option two, which is a little more interesting. That option two is the new guard, whose methods are even more shadowy. So all of this is happening at the same time. That's interesting. And then this whole thing happened Friday night, 3 days ago. I just recorded my presentation about music and sound. It's like all about audio. By the way, see me at the Funnel Conference in 5 days. It's all about timing, this whole presentation, right? And the importance of sound. And out of all the times I could have audio issues, that's when I have them. My sound starts going haywire. So that was real amusing. So before I do part two of the story from episode 115, I wanted to tell people and tell them, first of all, no one is saying that people out there are sending signals to interrupt my broadcast. Okay, I've never said anything like that. But here's the thing. something like that might happen to you. It might happen to us, like these weird things. Like the last thing you want to do is start saying all these crazy theories to people, right? And alienate yourself. But things like this may actually happen to you. And then when you find it strange and unsettling, or when your intuition is telling you that something's going on, you're going to have to suppress it. You always suppress it because you know what it sounds like. It sounds crazy. Nobody wants to sound crazy, especially when we're talking about freedom. And it's like we have this burden of having to convince the whole world that everything they believe is wrong. It's a really shitty position to be in, but this is the position we're in. That's the price of freedom. So I liken this to like when the terrorist attacks happen and the mass shootings, and then I go to break down the symbolism and I find all the little symbolic connections and what it means. And these connections, they get so intricate that even I don't want to talk about them, because you think like, wait a minute, how is that even possible? Like, for that to actually play out that way, it's like everybody would have to be on it. Like almost the whole universe, or at least everybody involved in the event, would have to be in on it and like be synchronizing their steps like a machine, you know? It's like when these connections are found in the sports world, this is why people say that all the sports are rigged, like down to every play. And of course, I don't think that. I haven't thought that. Even in 2016, when I was first introduced to gematria in sports, and Zachary Hubbard, I've never talked about him because, you know, he's I learned, he exposed me to gematria, and he called it. He said that the Cleveland Cavaliers were going to make a comeback on the Golden State Warriors, and that's never happened. Never had a 3-1 comeback in the NBA Finals, and then it happened. So that's when I paid attention, like, ooh, there's something to this number stuff and these connections. But even then, I never thought that the whole thing was rigged to the shot. And I realized later that there's more nuance to it, of course. The point is, if you encounter things like that, where you're seeing all these connections, remember that there's nuance there too, and you're not losing your mind. And I want to throw in a few things that I think play a part, like some normal explanations. I like to do normal explanations here, for reasons that these things may happen to you, okay? Number one, humans are electrical beings with an electromagnetic field around them. Not just our heart and our brain, you know, our body, we know about those fields. But your mind and your soul as well, you have a field. And you may actually be affecting equipment with our energy. We actually do. Like when you stand next to one of these old school antennas. I actually just bought a new one just in case, because I was cleaning around. I was here cleaning. I got the day off of work today, so I cleaned up my whole place. I even vacuumed and dusted all my books. So anyway, I got an antenna, and when you stand next to these antennas, you can actually change their signal, because your signal is affecting that. We're antennas as well. So you may get static when you get close to it, or the signal gets better when you touch it, right? It goes either way. And then due to a mix of all these variables, a mix of what thoughts you're having, what intentions, what fears, the universe, like a mirror, is reflecting things back to you for you to notice. Like dreams, having dreams and then discovering things in them, or having a hunch, having random intuitive moments. You know, especially women have this, especially mothers. Just ask them. It's so many people have these stories. Despite us having the instinct, or not instinct, but we have the urge to suppress it. There's number two, I don't even really want to get into this other explanation, but it's the spiritual angle. There's a spiritual angle to this stuff. What I'm talking about is that sometimes people who are trying to do good, or just people who are full of love, just regular people, they seem to get abused for no reason. Like even people who are not related to them, you know, have no relation to them. Like just malicious attacks. Not just by people, but seemingly the inanimate world, you know? It seems like just attacks for being who they are. And I'm not really going to get into that, because I for sure am not claiming to be spiritually pure or to be spiritually targeted. A lot of people claim that. I never have. I never said I was an angel or anything like that. But in my view, that has happened in the world, and it does happen. Uh, and I actually have a non-supernatural, like non-spiritual explanation for that, like a rational explanation for the mechanism of it. People take on destructive ideas like envy. So when you start breeding this envy and resentment within you, these ideas become entrenched. So these thoughts, through you nurturing those patterns of thinking, right? Thinking and feeling, then they become biochemical patterns, right? There's like neurons that fire together, wire together. You start hardwiring connections inside of your brain and combined with your emotions and your body. And then these become collective ideas, and collective ideas that everybody um, taps into their thought forms, and they affect people in the real world, just like tuning into radio frequencies. And that's explanation number 2. Explanation number 3 is electronics. They become such a stable part, like they become a stable in human life, like almost like vines that grow on a building. That's what nature does. When you build around it, it actually grows around you, it builds around you. And we do this with electronics to the point that cell phones, they're almost like becoming like another organ in the body. Like think about like an appendix or something, or a liver. It's like we're using this so much, it's almost becoming a part of us. So if we don't have the phone, it's almost like we were to, a part of our body's numb, or something's not right. The chemical and electrical impulses are becoming integrated with the rest of the neural network and the cell biology. So as we build this system with more computers, smarter machines, and all that, right? Well, they're gonna reflect us, because the internet network is just a mirror of our inner network, neural networks. So if there are things like conspiracies and secrets and all of this that we don't want to come to light, because we're interacting so much with machines and computers, well, then over time you would expect the computers to reflect that. Almost like we're setting our own minds in the minefield, in the internet software computer world. And I don't mean specifically AI per se. I mean like normal inanimate objects like are going to start to interact with humans as we integrate them into our lives. And I know people who are technical, like software people who have more technical knowledge than me, they're going to say, no, that's not how it works. And I get it. But no, trust me. Like, nature runs the show. And human beings have the ability to get themselves into some really deep shit with the things that they envision and create and manifest. That is possible. That can happen. And there's a lot of self-fulfilling prophecy that goes on in the world. But of course, I'm not even saying that I was targeted or that you would be targeted if you speak on a certain topic. It's just audio problems. But sometimes you may think so. And so I record this so that if that ever happens, or happens to somebody don't be scared to speak out. Like, don't be scared to do what you're doing. Keep going. Because when it comes to whistleblowers and exposing crime and conspiracy, as a general rule, that applies, I would say, 100% of the time, the louder you are, the safer you are. So if you're getting pushback, you should get even louder. You should push even more, because that's how it works. When you let up and you start censoring yourself, and you start looking out for who's watching and looking out for the surveillance, that is when you're going to be in more trouble. Now, within reason, Of course, if you're going to meet and talk about something, don't turn your phone off. Leave all the electronics and go talk in the middle of the forest with somebody. If you need to actually plan something that you don't want people to know, it has to be strictly in-person conversation, far, far away from any devices. It would be best in the ocean, if you're by the lake. You need to talk in the lake. That's the only thing I would trust. But with all of this, the control structure, it seems to be powerful. It's not actually as strong as it seems to me. It's like one of those animals in the nature programs, the documentaries, and they make themselves look big and scary. but it's actually the soft jelly thing that's trying to defend itself. And that's how I see the control structure. This thing's got tentacles everywhere, yes, but it's because of influence. Because of influence and overlap and having great leverage, like emotional and psychological advantages and insight into people, right? And their strength actually comes from the people that work for the system. Like these mid-level people are where the strength comes from. The actual top of the pyramid is soft and jelly. And that's why they need the AI and the mass surveillance, because that's where their strength comes from. It's from us. It's from knowing our moves, reading our cards, knowing our innermost, traumas and vulnerabilities. So don't be scared of the illusion of power, because real power comes from having a grip on your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. And that is a perfect transition to summarize where we were in the story, because I want to finish it off. I cut the video right at the time I was exploring the nuance within the controllers, how these elite collaborators have within their own ranks this division, seemingly. But let's take a few steps back to the beginning. Vfluence, it was a company that suppressed anti-GMO activists. This company got exposed. So the president of that company, Jay Byrne, he said that it's these NGOs and journalist organizations who are accusing him of being part of a global conspiracy, which in a funny way actually alleges that there is a conspiracy, but not on his side, on the side of these nonprofit organizations, activists, and their funders. So we looked at the funders. We looked at profit versus nonprofit influence. And then we found that the money actually overlaps. Bill Gates, George Soros, that there's overlap there. And it looks like the corporate rich and powerful, they're actually paying the groups and activists that seem to hate them. And that's where we left off, why I proposed two possibilities. Option one is the obvious one, that they have a common agenda, and it's not even a real divide. And all these activists are just controlled opposition. The United Nations Progressive, Liberal, Environmental Front is just that. It's just a front. So it's a way for the big evil corporations and the governments to secure their power, but in a way that looks clean and non-threatening. So what if they make these CEOs do recycling programs and spend $300 million on clean working conditions, and even penalize them if they don't meet strict testing protocols, So what if they house 1 million homeless people, if they did, which they wouldn't do, by the way? It's not going to take down the company for them to take that hit and be a cleaner company. It's not going to take down anybody who is actually close to those big players. It's going to take down anyone who would ever try to compete with the company. So it's a way to tear down competitors. It's putting distance between yourself and your opposition. It's putting more distance in the race. And it's the rich and powerful who are implementing these United Nations programs and the EU as a buffer zone. That's option one. Option two, which I didn't get to talk about, is that this new faction is actually real, and there is a shifting of the balance of power, and that there is an ideological, humanitarian, environmental faction within the elites that is demanding or extorting this money from the corporations. Maybe not all the elites are rich. Maybe the rich industrialists succumb to these liberal, environmental, and social pressure groups that will create a storm for this private sector if they don't have their way. And maybe there is an organic socialism that is taking away power from capitalism, from free market capitalism, even though it's not free market, it's crony, but still. So maybe there is this growing anti-free market sentiment due to people just having less power. And these two possibilities seem to be totally opposite each other, right? Running totally counter. In one, the wealthy are still in control, having corrupted government, right? And in the other, it is actually the wealthy who are under attack. And it is this shadowy intellectual elite who has influenced government, and it has corrupted media and society to keep taking and taking more away from the established power structure. And now these guys who aren't necessarily in the families, who aren't necessarily from the same organizations, are actually managing to replace them and become the new power structure. To us, it looks the same, but it's a different group of people. And just like there's a divide for the clueless masses, the left versus right divide, there's also a divide in the higher level of the public and private sector. There's division in the higher rankings, in the upper levels of the hierarchy of control as well, right? But the question is, though, is that divide even real? Or is it just another two-party illusion, like the one for the masses, right? The foot soldiers, we have an illusion that's supposed to catch us all. And then there's the same kind of two-party division to keep the officers of the global control structure in check, the administrators, right? So what I'm saying is, even if we assume that there is competition in the levels of the hierarchy above us, is that a genuine struggle for the throne? Over the years, like the Chinese dynasties or something, that are wars for power, and they're competing with each other. And then whatever faction wins is the one who decides the direction of the world. Well, that would explain a lot of world history. That would explain world wars and all these conflicts, and it would explain a lot of conflicting information like that we don't really get. It may even explain entire cultures and civilizations disappearing, right? I know a lot of people are into that. It's not really a deep area of research for me, but there may be something to that. But I personally hold the conviction that this itself is a puppet show, and they're not really competing. Even the billionaires are being played against each other. They think they're competing, but they're not. The same way that we are being played. And I first heard this years ago from Mark Passio, specifically that the hierarchy of slavery, it ensures that the people at the higher levels are themselves slaves, just like we are slaves to the level above us, right? And nature shows us that. The universe is similar across all scales. That's the fractal nature of all systems in the universe. We see the same patterns in the lower levels at the higher levels. Microcosm and macrocosm, right? They're going to follow the same laws and cycles. So to us, Monsanto, Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, Elon Musk, they all look the same to us because we're at this low level of power looking up. But to them, looking down at us, we all look the same to them. And they don't even understand us. We don't even speak the same language. So meanwhile, they themselves, the way I see it, they think of themselves as the main character in their own movie. So they see this shifting of power happen, and they think this is where the real game is being played. So they think that the handshakes, the silent agreements, the double crosses, and the shell companies, I think they buy the illusion as reality, and even they don't see that they're being manipulated too. Of course, some of them do. Of course, I think there are people that know what's going on. Some of them are partially aware that they're being puppets, right? Others are going to be totally deranged and devoted to self. And others have a disdain even for themselves. I think there are a lot of people like that. But it's all a mix, and everyone has an Achilles heel. And everyone involved up there, they have a trump card on each other. This person has something on them and has something on them. That's come out, right? The way all of this exploitation of children and all of that material, the human trafficking, and the way those videos and recordings are often used as blackmail, right? That's come out. I want to be careful how I talk about this because I don't want the video to get shadow banned, because that's a whole different topic altogether. There's a whole dark side of this, but it corroborates the idea that these people have something on each other, and nobody's really in a position of power, because they all have to be worried about this guy and this guy. So it's this constant struggle, and it's just this big, convoluted push and pull where there aren't two sides. It's too much to ever connect and untangle. So everyone has an Achilles heel, everyone has a trump card, and the web of control controls all involved. And no one can connect A to B. And that would be my mic drop moment. That's my worldview. My worldview is nuance. We are enslaved by psychological and emotional vulnerability inside of a spectrum of influence. And you almost have to work backwards from that, because the video should end right there. But I'm going to leave that alone because I want to complete this investigation. So we still have the question, are we seeing a changing of the guard right now? And it's a pertinent question right now in the alternative media and the research community, because we seem to be seeing a changing of the guard in the power structure. Depending on your perspective, it's a change from the hereditary banking political elite, right? The families, the Illuminati families and all that, to this kind of heterogeneous ideological elite. People that seem to come from everywhere, all races, that you can't really link them to anything, but they're sure as hell pretty powerful now, and it seems like they come out of nowhere. Or if you view it in a different way, it's the shift from this incremental creeping Fabian socialism, which really we have seen for like the past 200, 300 years, now shifting to this loud and direct, brash, uncompromising, AI-based technocracy. Like old school technocracy. And I don't think it's been framed this way before, but I'm going to frame it as wastefulness versus efficiency, both being control systems. And neither a wasteful nor an efficient control system is good. But historically, control systems have been wasteful, right? To be an empire, to be a theocracy, feudalism, it's messy. You got to rule with an iron fist. You got to make examples out of dissenters, public executions. You got to constantly be looking into everybody's lives to make sure they're not falling out of line. Then communism and crony capitalism, it's also wasteful, because you have to keep giving speeches to keep the people involved. You got to spend more money to keep this facade of strength, right? You got to print more money, you got to pass more laws, you got to bribe politicians, and in the meantime, people see all this and they become disillusioned, they slip through the cracks, and they become less effective. So the environment becomes more depleted and destroyed, and resources become scarce, and the skill becomes scarce, intelligence becomes lesser, and the ability to make use of resources decreases. So by osmosis, the control structure actually gets weaker as well, because everything gets weaker. And this is where we seem to be in the present day, where this is what Monsanto and Bayer represent. They represent the old school wasteful way. It's what these career politicians and corrupt bureaucrats and the corporate CEOs represent. And now you've been seeing for a while now, voices against this old school wasteful system. Environmentalism, organic food, going vegan, sustainability, equity, criminal justice, all kinds of social justice, non-discrimination. That's on the activist side. And on the elite side, on the governance side of the same efficiency faction, you have digital surveillance, Internet of Things, transhumanism, government efficiency, artificial intelligence, total control grid, having a database of resources, digital currency, all of that. And that it's technocracy. That is what we're seeing, right? So, perfect example going on right now with USAID and with Elon Musk. I saw a tweet where they cut all these things, all this wasteful spending, all that wasteful spending, all the corrupt government. They are, yes, that is wasteful spending, that is corrupt government. That it's time to be nonpartisan there. Like, you got to see, this is true. That stuff, assuming that is accurate, that is corruption. Okay, so they're cutting out corruption. This wasteful, corrupt control system is becoming, is getting damaged from a particular angle by this new efficient control system, which is going to be worse. And that's what it's all about. It's two separate control styles, two competing factions. Both of them are bad for humanity. And Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, RFK, the Rockefellers, George Soros, they seem to be all over this spectrum, right? So it's hard to identify who's who. But nothing could be further from the truth of them being all over the spectrum. They're all on the side of efficiency. That's the United Nations, that's Donald Trump, that's Elon Musk. All of this is efficiency, not an individual-centric efficiency, a real one. A real efficiency would be mastery of thoughts, emotions, and actions, ability to dream, ability to create, to envision, and then implementing those visions into reality. So not that, not the freedom to carve your own path, okay, not the freedom to do that, not the efficiency of love and then using love as your guiding force to happiness. Love, the least wasteful force, right, in the universe. But this is the efficiency of centralization, the efficient integration of all individuals into a single unit. A single unit that thinks as one, breathes as one, moves as one, like a beehive, where everybody aspires to be the same, the queen bee, right? To pursue the same ideal. Not a real ideal, but just the agreed upon shiniest quality and quantity. So this is when human beings begin to see themselves as resources and soldiers in the service of this collective unit. People say service to the race. It's not a real thing. There's no such thing. It's collectivism, as opposed to service to self and service to your own values, and which means those you love. Your loved ones. It's really an extension of service to self, because it's not just taking more for you and like taking more and more. It's about what you value, what you love, right? What you want to see more of, the things that you will sacrifice for. It's still service to self. And I'm a big proponent of service to self, because within service to self, that is implied with me, service to truth, right? To protecting the innocents, to wanting the best for people, being happy for others' success, wanting to facilitate their success, wanting to offer things that other people don't have. That, people will say, "Oh, you're not talking about service to self." No, for me, that's service to self. So so anybody who doesn't like that can shove it, because, yeah. Don't take on the morality of your attackers, and that's what we've done. They've made us think that service to self is bad, when really you should ask the question, well, what does service to self mean for you? And then tell them what it means for you, and then you can really shut them up. But anyway, how it really works, from, again, so this is somebody outside looking in. I don't know everything. I don't know these people. But for me, there's no real competition at the top. At the top of this pyramid, they don't really care which path is chosen. They know that you can't force an outcome no matter how hard you try. So instead, they control both outcomes. And they give the world the power of choice. Because when you have no knowledge of self and you have no knowledge of the mentality of your opponents, you don't really have power. That's not real choice. So they fund both sides happily, because they want to muddy the waters as much as possible. They want to make it as complicated and convoluted as possible. And we sometimes get stories that don't make sense. Like RFK being part of this new government, right? He's supposed to be one of these pseudo-libertarians, big patriotic nationalist, government. Trump government hires. But then you see him getting like grilled in the congressional hearings, like he's getting attacked and abused, and you're thinking, damn, who's the good guy here? Because clearly they don't like him. A lot of these guys that we see as the deep state, they don't like him. So who's the good guy? Well, there are no good guys in this story. The web of influence is such that a control system is going to win either way, whether the guy knows it or not. And the more conflict there is, and there's so much conflict, it ensures that people are going to have no time and no energy to figure it out, because there's too much going on, too hard to keep up with all of it. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Not having enough time to investigate everything and actually be involved. Yeah, that's the plan. The plan is to make it all so convoluted that you're either investing in illusion or you check out of reality altogether. And that's why the world feels hollow, and that's why time feels like it's flying by. And that's why this week in Tyranny, despite the interference or whatever happens, as long as I'm breathing and alive, it's always going to stand here as a middle finger of defiance to that manipulation game. because I totally reject this idea that everything is too complex so that there is no time or there is no hope. Um, this is actually all a lot simpler than we think. Uh, and that is a good transition to what I wanted to talk about, and I didn't get to. I wanted to talk about organic food because these are the simple things: food, shelter, water, relationships. It's really all we need, right? We need power, we need resources, but as long as we have close connections with each other and we have uh, health, we have the ability to actually move and function and survive independently, we're going to be fine. But this organic food thing, there's a nuance to it. So I've always bought for the past few years organic food because it's just obvious. It looks more healthy. It actually spoils quickly, which means it actually came from nature, right? It hasn't been polished and inflated to give it the face of nutrition. It's like actual nutrition. But I've heard over the years here and there that organic is not this magic bullet and that there's a scam with organic products and that the label of healthy or natural or organic, it's not really to be trusted. And that's kind of common sense, right? Like we know that there's marketing stuff, and just because it's natural, if you really think about how it's made, of course, those claims are going to be inflated and they may not be true at all. But again, what are you supposed to do, right? Do we have the time to investigate? Well, as part of this, I looked into the environmental working group video about organic and kind of read a few things. They of course support it, right? Again, this is the side of EU, United Nations. So they're UN type environmentalists and they support organic food. And I found out, I mean, it's obvious now, right? But I didn't truly absorb the reality of it. I didn't stop to think about it in the past. The question is, who is controlling what is certified organic, right? So who's putting the labels on? Who's giving the green light for the green label? And the answer is the US Department of Agriculture. So a federal agency. That's in the United States, right? Obviously in other countries it'll be different, but it'll still be a centralized authority, not an independent third party. So, if we're eating organic because we want to avoid what the system is trying to feed us, well, the system is the one who's putting the label organic on. So they're controlling what's in there then. And there's this National Organic Standards Board. That's the federal advisory board who is making recommendations on a wide range of issues involving the production, handling, and processing of organic products. In other words, what do? They control it. They say what goes. That's considers and makes recommendations means they are the law. They say what's going to pass. And GMOs are one thing. Pesticides are another big concern, right? But organic doesn't mean pesticides, and I found out in that video I watched from the Environmental Working Group. Well, there are still pesticides in organic products. They just have to be natural pesticides. Of course, they need to pass the testing, but who decides the standards that they test for? We don't know. Who knows if this heavily processed, naturally derived substance, and there's a lot of that, right? If it's actually better than a chemical laboratory created one, right? Because you can extract something, vegetable oil or whatever, extract it from nature, process it 10 times, 100 times. Technically it came from nature, but it could actually be so toxic and damaging, right? And I'm not going to pretend like I know something when I don't, because it would require a lot of investigation that I just haven't done. There are people who dedicate their lives to that. So all I can give you is the overview and where I see the nuance being here. But I can see this clearly, that organic and natural is controlled opposition. At the very least, it's controlled opposition. At worst, it is intentionally made worse and toxic to attack the people who want to be healthier because they're more of a threat to the control structure. But I'm not necessarily saying that, and this is where the nuance comes in. Monsanto and Vfluence, of course, they're against this. They're against non-GMO food. They're against this natural stuff. But The technocratic, efficient future control structure is not necessarily against organic food and going vegan and being healthy. Because if you read their writings and the United Nations writings, they say, at least, that they want people to be physically fit. They want them to be eating healthy, and they want them to be getting maximum nutrition with minimal resources. Meaning, they want you to eat vegan and not stuff yourself with garbage. And that's not just a scam. The people a lot of people working for this actually believe it. That's another reason that it works. They make it make sense. They at least begin with something that people can buy into. So people buy into this illusion that the 15-minute cities and the sustainability is actually going to work. And we should recognize that illusion when the activists are pressuring these organizations, and they make recommendations to ban the food colorings, take the PFAS out, right? Take the microplastics out. Stand up for more disclosure on the packaging, and even the air might get cleaner with the emission regulations, right? Like, I'm not saying everything the FDA does is just to tear down companies. Maybe they do some things that actually improve air quality. So there's nuance to that, because I think there are people out there who think they actually are preserving the value of a fresh fruit by utilizing the A peel and the organic peel and the coating that is preserving the fruit's nutritional value. I do believe that some of these technocrats, they want at least a physically healthy population. And maybe they even want a somewhat intelligent one. Because a lot of these guys, the techno nerd computer types, they're not exactly cut from the same cloth as the tyrants that we're used to. The sadists and the narcissists. They're different. They're still batshit crazy. And they think that the smart city Neuralink agenda is the way to go. I think there are people like that. And sometimes their ideas are going to overlap with true principles. Sometimes they're going to accidentally make sense. Like when Elon talks about corruption and the bureaucracy, you may be confused and think, wow, he's talking about freedom. Like, what's up with that? No, he just disdains that the ones in charge wouldn't be the fittest to rule. You got to remember, these guys are your eugenicists and Darwinist types. So when you hear politicians talk about change, talking about making things better, making things great, 100% of the time it's about replacing a corrupt control system. It's always going to be replacing a corrupt one, replacing it with a more efficient, stronger, and therefore worse control system. And that is a global conspiracy, and that it is no joke. And it happens time and time again. Sometimes it seems like somebody is extending their hand to you. But as soon as they grab your hand, they're going to throw themselves back off of a cliff and drown you with them. That's the level of nuance we're working with. And they're not even going to know that they're doing it. And nobody sees the one pulling the strings. And that's all I have for you today. So, are you tired of hearing about the funnel conference yet? Because it's coming up. It's coming up in 5 days. It's February 22nd is when my presentation will be, The Sonic Divorce. I'm not just going to talk about my presentation. I'm going to talk about all the presentations. Before I do that, I'm going to release a song. I'm releasing actually a song each day of the week, exclusively for the funnel conference. Okay, I'm hearing that one or more of my songs may be featured there as part of the conference, which is awesome, and I appreciate that. Just before recording this, I heard Derek Bartolocelli and Leslie Powers talking about the conference. Got me excited, so I will be there. I'm going to be in the roundtable discussions. Hey, you guys invited me, so now I'm heavily involved. I'm going to have my fingerprints all over this thing, all right? So I'm excited about that. Hope you will join me. Today I'm releasing Hard Labor, that song. I'll let it speak for itself. It's going to be on the channel. Now, I wanted to talk about the other presenters. Brandon Martin, going in alphabetical order here, is going to have the Declaration of Liberation and Abolition by Free Sovereign Beings Under Natural Law. I'm looking forward to that, seeing a declaration, right? I love that. Brandon Spencer, Devoid of Conscience, Lacking Consciousness. It's going to be interesting. Chris Jansen's going to talk about spiritual mathematics, which is interesting because I talk a little bit about mathematics in my presentation. That is definitely my cup of tea. Derek Bartolocelli, The Two Sides of AI, Humanity Needs to Know. It sounds like there's going to be some nuance there, which I like, and he's mentioned that it may be a bit controversial. So I love controversy. It's going to be fun, okay? Dr. Dustin Plattner, Transforming Our Narcissistic Wounds into Divine Care. That's shadow work, right? That sounds like shadow work. This is exactly the thing that's keeping us enslaved. I'm looking forward to that. Etienne de la Boutier is going to have a big presentation. I can't read the text. I'm looking at the poster right now, so apologies, but I can't read anything. Jackie Krasna is going to have the tipping point of mass awakening. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Jake Jackson, how do we get from where we are to a world of complete freedom? Of course. Jim Adams, the missing ethic of permaculture, care for truth. So permaculture is again, this is something that is not like the focus, is not like the forte of mine, but this is what we just talked about with organic food. I mean, permaculture is important, and yeah, if we can actually get a grasp on resource and control our own resources and limit our dependence, this is going to be the source of our energy. Anytime we can make our energy derive from nature, we're cutting off the middleman, we're cutting off the buffer zone, and we're breaking that hierarchy of control. Then this guy named Conrad is going to talk about music. Then Chris Nelson is going to talk about truly caring about being enslaved. It sounds simple, but I love that. Truly caring. This is Funnel 4, Humanity Rising, inspiring care to action. We're going to sound like a broken record, but you just got to feel it. It's really emotion. To me, it's all emotion based. If you feel good about yourself and you feel strongly about being in this position where people are controlling us and they're like little soft jelly pieces of trash, scumbags, yeah, that's gonna be that's gonna fuel you. Leslie Powers, The Power of Music, Bridging Matter and Spirit. Another presentation about music, and I like what she said, that we're not competing. This is as complementary as it could be, and again, it makes sense that it would be about music because this is what music does. It is a bridge. It is complementing. So you could see it as a complement between the body. I mean the connection between the body and the mind, the connection between objective and subjective, right? Connecting art to actual manifestation. Because Vinny Eastwood told me this when I was speaking with him a while ago. I said something about music. I asked him a question, and he said, "Well, think about it. What's the last time you looked at a sculpture and it made you cry, or it motivated you and it made you feel sad? It doesn't really happen with books, although they're so powerful, and paintings. But with music, it can just hit you. It is a bridge between subject and object. There's a bridge between people and nature, but it's also a bridge of the body and the mind. Nate Cap is going to talk about mental power. Okay, it takes some mental power to talk about music and put it together. Okay, so Sarah Cross, all we really are is spirit. Yes, sounds simple, and I like that because simplicity is key. But don't get it twisted. These are simple titles, but I know that there are going to be some fresh ideas here, because I know that these presenters, they're like me. So we get invited, we're trying to present. Everybody's trying to give and share something new, and yeah, it's complementary, it's cooperation, but I think that there is a level of competition, and I think it's the healthiest, it's the best kind of one. When you in a family, you want to offer more than the other person is offering. I think that's the way you want to be in relationships. In a relationship, you want to give just a bit more than the person you're in a relationship with. Like, that's love, isn't it? And we're supposed to be in this community of love. Um, I think that's it. You know, and I think everybody here is trying to inject something never before seen. I know I did. You know. And then, last but not least, Will Keller, Symbiosis, the Rhythm of Life. And that's what it's all about, rhythm and timing. That's what my presentation is all about. And you might as well just leave it there. And now I will say goodbye to you. Thank you for joining me on this part 2. And now I'm going to see what is going on with this audio stuff, because I already had to restart and repair my computer today. I had to, and this is, so I had my whole computer crash on me, but it was my fault. It was completely my fault, because I'm thinking like, okay, I'm having technical issues, so I'm going to update OBS. I'm going to update DaVinci Resolve and make sure all my stuff is up to date. So then when I updated it, then I remembered, this is why I was running an old version of DaVinci Resolve, because I cannot run the new one because I have a Dell Optiplex computer, which is a pretty decent machine, but it is an older machine and I don't have the new graphics cards, so I can't run DaVinci 17, 18, and 19. I gotta run 16.0, and then because I already had a version installed, for me to then get back to it, I was having issues, and then I did a system restore point to get to before I started messing with everything. But then when I vacuumed the whole place and cleaned it up and I reconnected all the wires, then I couldn't start the computer. And good thing I was doing system backup, because otherwise I would have had to completely reboot my machine and reinstall everything, and then it would be a lot more difficult. Yeah. So, if you're a content creator, don't do that. Be organized. So there's that. Yeah, that's all I'll say. Check out my song. And thank you. And I'll see you in a few days, hopefully. And I'll see you on the next episode of This Week in Tyranny.